The first night Aiden took the job, the manager didn't bother with a proper interview. He simply handed him a name tag, pointed toward the empty parking lot and said, "If anything weird happens, don't go outside." At the time, Aiden brushed it off as one of those overused jokes people make about night shifts. The gas station sat on the edge of a forgotten highway, miles away from the nearest town, surrounded by dry land and silence so deep, it almost felt unnatural. Places like that always carried rumors, but Aiden needed the money, and night shifts paid more. So, he stayed. The station itself was small, just 2 fuel pumps, a flickering overhead sign, and a convenience store that smelled faintly of burnt coffee and aging plastic. Inside, the fluorescent lights buzzed constantly, creating a dull, never-ending hum that made time feel distorted. By midnight, Aiden realized just how isolated he really was. Cars passed only occasionally, maybe one every hour, their headlights slicing through the darkness before disappearing again into the endless road. Most of them never stopped. At exactly 1:17 a.m., the first customer arrived. A dusty pickup truck pulled in, engine still running. A man stepped out, and immediately, something felt off. He didn't glance at the pumps or even toward the store entrance. Instead, he stood completely still, staring directly at Aiden through the glass window. For nearly a full minute, he didn't move. Then, slowly, he raised his hand and knocked on the window. Aiden frowned. The door wasn't locked. He gestured toward the entrance, mousing that the man could come in, though he doubted he'd be heard. The man didn't react. Instead, he knocked again, harder this time. There was something unsettling in the way he stood there, unmoving, eyes locked in place. Then, without a word, he turned, got back into his truck, and drove away. Aiden tried to laugh it off, but the silence afterward felt heavier than before. At 2:03 a.m., the power flickered once. The lights dimmed, then snapped back on, the buzzing growing louder for a brief moment, like a strained groan. Aiden checked the breaker behind the counter. Everything looked normal, but when he glanced at the security monitor, something caught his attention. There were 4 camera feeds, inside the store, the counter, the pumps, and the back lot. A place not visible from inside, just cracked asphalt and a chain link fence. On that screen, someone was standing there. The figure was barely visible, positioned just beyond the reach of the security light. It didn't move, it didn't shift, it simply stood there. Aiden leaned closer, confused. No car had arrived. He was certain of that. For a moment he considered going outside, but then the manager's warning echoed in his mind. "If anything weird happens, don't go outside." Aiden kept staring at the screen. The figure remained perfectly still, almost unnaturally so. A cold weight settled in his chest. He reached for the phone and called the manager, but it went straight to voicemail. When he looked back at the monitor, the figure was gone. The rest of the night passed slowly, uneventfully, but the unease lingered. By sunrise, Aiden nearly convinced himself it was just exhaustion playing tricks on him. Almost. The second night began the same way. Quiet, empty, still. But this time, the feeling of being watched never left him. At exactly 1:17 a.m., the pickup truck returned. Same dust-covered exterior, same running engine, same man. He stepped out slowly, never breaking eye contact with the store. Again, he approached the window. Again, he knocked. Aiden didn't respond this time. Something was deeply wrong. Then the man smiled, a wide, stiff smile that didn't look natural. Slowly, he raised his hand and pointed, not at Aiden, but at something behind him. Aiden's breath caught as he turned around. The store was empty, just shelves, refrigerators, and a flickering light in the back aisle. Nothing else. When he turned back, the man was gone. No truck, no headlights, nothing. Aiden rushed outside despite himself, his heart pounding. The highway stretched empty in both directions. There was no sign of anyone. That night, he locked the door. By the third night, things escalated. The power didn't just flicker. It went out completely. Darkness swallowed the store, leaving only the faint glow of the emergency exit sign. Aiden stood frozen behind the counter, listening. The constant hum was gone. The refrigerators had fallen silent, and in that silence, he heard it. Footsteps. Slow, deliberate, moving somewhere inside the store. His throat tightened as he called out, "Hello!" No response. The footsteps continued, growing closer. He grabbed a flashlight and switched it on, the beam slicing through the darkness. The aisles were empty. Nothing seemed out of place, but the footsteps hadn't stopped. They were coming from behind him. Aiden spun around. Nothing. Then suddenly, a loud knock echoed against the front door. He nearly dropped the flashlight. The man was back, but this time, he wasn't alone. Behind him stood several figures, 3, maybe 4, just outside the reach of the light, all of them perfectly still, all facing the store. Aiden felt his chest tighten as a horrifying realization hit him. None of them had cars. They had simply appeared. The man stepped closer, pressing his hand against the glass, then slowly mouthed words Aiden couldn't hear, but could read clearly. "Let us in," and the lights snapped back on. And just like that, they were gone. The fourth night, Aiden almost didn't return, but he needed the money, and a part of him, curious and reckless, wanted answers. This time, he prepared. He locked the doors immediately, covered the windows with cardboard, and kept the security monitor in constant view. For hours, nothing happened. Then, at 3:12 a.m., the backlot camera flickered and went dead. Aiden stared, heart racing, as the other cameras began to glitch one by one, static, distortion, until only one feed remained, the front door. And standing outside it was Aiden, or something that looked exactly like him. Same face, same clothes, same expression. The copy tilted its head slowly and smiled. Then it raised its hand and knocked. Aiden froze, his mind screaming that it wasn't real, but his body refused to move. The thing knocked again, harder this time. The glass trembled slightly. "Open the door," it said. This time Aiden heard it clearly. It was his voice. Something inside him snapped. He ran to the back and locked himself in the storage room. The knocking didn't stop. It grew louder, more aggressive, echoing through the walls, until suddenly, it stopped. The silence that followed was unbearable. Minutes passed, then hours. Aiden didn't come out until sunrise. When he finally stepped out, everything looked normal. No broken glass, no signs of forced entry. Nothing, except for one thing, written on the inside of the front door, in something dark and smeared. "You shouldn't have stayed inside." Aiden quit that morning. The manager didn't question him, just nodded, as if he already knew. A week later, a new employee took the night shift. 3 nights in, he disappeared. No trace, no explanation. But even now, drivers passing that lonely highway late at night sometimes report something strange. A figure standing near the pumps, perfectly still, watching the store, waiting. And if you ever stop there, if you step out of your car, if you hear a knock on the window, don't open the door, because whatever is out there, it's still trying to get in. The night shift always feels different. Not quieter, not calmer, just wrong. There's something about working while the rest of the world sleeps that makes every sound sharper, every shadow deeper, and every second stretch just a little too long. For Daniel, it was just supposed to be another shift, another boring, uneventful night. At least, that's what he thought. Daniel had been working security at a small office building on the outskirts of town for about 3 months. It wasn't a glamorous job, but it paid the bills. The building itself wasn't anything special. 3 floors, mostly empty at night, with a few companies renting office spaces. His shift started at 11 p.m. and ended at 7 a.m. 8 hours of silence. 8 hours of nothing. Or at least, it used to be nothing. That night started like any other. Daniel clocked in, nodded at the day guard leaving, and sat down in the security office. The room was small, lit by the glow of multiple CCTV monitors. Each screen showed a different part of the building. Hallways, stairwells, parking lot, lobby. Everything looked normal, still, dead. Around midnight, Daniel began his routine patrol. He grabbed his flashlight and walked the empty corridors, his footsteps echoing slightly against the tiled floor. Every office door was locked, every window sealed. Nothing unusual, nothing out of place. But as he reached the end of the second-floor hallway, he felt it. That strange, crawling sensation, like someone was watching him. He turned around quickly. Nothing. Just a long, empty corridor. But something felt off. He brushed it away, telling himself it was just his imagination. Night shifts had a way of messing with your head. Still, he walked a little faster back to the security room. By 1:30 a.m., the building felt heavier. The silence wasn't peaceful anymore. It was suffocating. Daniel leaned back in his chair, staring at the monitors. That's when he noticed it. Movement. On camera 7, the third-floor hallway. He leaned forward, eyes narrowing. The footage showed a dark corridor, but at the far end, just for a split second, something moved. Not fast, not slow, just wrong. Probably a glitch, he muttered under his breath. The cameras weren't exactly high quality. Still, he kept watching, waiting. Nothing happened. Until it did. A figure appeared at the very end of the hallway, standing completely still. Daniel froze. The figure wasn't there before. He was sure of it. It looked like a person, tall, thin, standing in the darkness where the hallway lights didn't fully reach. "Hello?" Daniel said out loud, even though he knew no one could hear him. His heart started to pound. There shouldn't be anyone up there. The building was locked. He grabbed his radio. "Control to anyone on site?" Only static answered. Of course, he was alone. Daniel kept his eyes locked on the screen. The figure didn't move, didn't twitch, didn't breathe. It just stood there. And then the camera flickered for just 1 second. When it came back, the figure was closer. Daniel's breath caught in his throat. It hadn't walked. It hadn't run. It had just moved. Now it stood halfway down the hallway, still perfectly still, still facing the camera. "That's not possible," Daniel whispered. Every instinct told him to stay where he was, but his job was to investigate. He didn't want to, but he had to. Grabbing his flashlight, Daniel stepped out of the security room. The hallway outside felt colder than before. Too cold. He made his way to the stairwell, each step echoing louder than it should have. Like the building itself was listening. The second floor was empty, silent. When he reached the third floor, he paused at the door, his hand hovering over the handle. For a moment, he considered going back, pretending he didn't see anything. Then he heard it, a faint dragging sound from the other side. Daniel swallowed hard and pushed the door open. The third-floor hallway stretched out before him, empty, silent. He shined his flashlight down the corridor. Nothing. "No one's here," he said, trying to convince himself. But as he stepped forward, the light above him flickered once, twice, then died completely. Darkness swallowed the hallway, leaving only his flashlight beam cutting through the black. Then he heard it again, dragging, closer this time, from behind him. Daniel spun around, his flashlight shaking as it scanned the darkness. Nothing. And then, a whisper, right next to his ear. "You shouldn't be here." Daniel screamed and stumbled backward, dropping his flashlight. It rolled across the floor, casting spinning shadows across the walls. And in those shadows, he saw it. The figure, standing just a few feet away. Its face wasn't there. There were no eyes, no mouth, no features. Just a void of darkness where its face should have been. Daniel scrambled to his feet and ran. He didn't look back, didn't stop, didn't think. He burst through the stairwell door and slammed it shut behind him, his chest heaving as he backed away. Then a loud bang hit the door from the other side. Daniel froze. Another bang, and another. The metal door rattled violently as if something was trying to break through. Then suddenly, silence. Daniel stood there, shaking, listening, waiting. Nothing. Slowly, he turned around, and that's when he saw it. At the end of the second-floor hallway. The same figure, standing there, waiting. It shouldn't have been possible. There was no way it could have gotten there. But it did. And this time, it tilted its head, like it was curious, like it was studying him. Daniel backed away slowly, his mind unraveling. Nothing made sense anymore. Then the lights flickered again, and the figure was gone. Daniel didn't wait. He ran back to the security room, locked the door, and collapsed into the corner, gripping his radio like it was the only thing keeping him alive. The rest of the night passed in complete silence. No movement, no sounds. But Daniel didn't move, didn't sleep, didn't even blink. At 7 a.m., the day guard arrived. He found Daniel pale, shaking, and unable to speak. Later, when they checked the footage, there was nothing. No figure, no movement, no glitches, just empty hallways. But on camera 7, at exactly 1:37 a.m., there was one frame, one single frame, where Daniel could be seen standing in the third-floor hallway, facing the camera, completely still. And where his face should have been, there was nothing. Just darkness. It started like any other night shift. Quiet, empty, predictable. The kind of night when nothing ever really happens. But at exactly 3:17 a.m., everything changed. Because that was the moment Noah realized something impossible. The hospital had a 4th floor. Noah had only been working the night shift at Westbridge General Hospital for 3 weeks. It wasn't a bad job. The pay was decent, the responsibilities were simple, and most nights passed in complete silence. He worked as a security guard, spending hours watching camera feeds, walking empty hallways, and occasionally responding to minor calls. The hospital itself was old, built decades ago, and even after renovations, it still carried a strange, heavy atmosphere. At night, the building felt different, like it was awake. There were only a few people on shift with him. A nurse named Farah, a quiet janitor named Imran, and an ER doctor who rarely left his office. Most of the time, Noah felt like he was completely alone. At first, he didn't mind the silence, but slowly, that silence started to feel unnatural, almost watching him. The first strange thing he noticed was camera 14. Every night, without fail, around 2:45 a.m., the feed would glitch. The screen would fill with static for a few seconds before returning to normal. Noah reported it during his second shift, but maintenance found nothing wrong. Still, the glitch continued. Same time, every single night. Then came the footsteps. At first, they were faint, barely noticeable, soft echoes coming from the third-floor hallway. But each night, they became clearer, slower, more deliberate. Whenever Noah went to check, the hallway was always empty. No patients, no staff, just rows of empty beds and flickering lights. Farah told him it was just the building settling. Imran joked that maybe the hospital had ghosts that needed treatment. But Noah couldn't laugh, because deep down, he knew something wasn't right. One night, just after 3 a.m., Noah decided to check the third floor again. He walked slowly down the corridor, his footsteps echoing softly against the cold tiles. The lights above buzzed faintly. Then suddenly, he heard it. Footsteps, right behind him. He froze instantly. The sound stopped. Slowly, he turned around. Nothing was there. The hallway behind him was completely empty. But when he turned back, one of the doors ahead of him was open. He was certain it had been closed before. Heart pounding, Noah approached the room. The lights inside flickered violently, casting sharp shadows across the walls. The bed was empty, but the sheets were crumpled like someone had just been lying there moments ago. He stepped inside carefully. That's when he noticed the IV stand beside the bed. It was moving, gently swaying back and forth as if someone had brushed past it seconds earlier. A chill ran down his spine. He didn't want to stay there any longer. Without wasting another second, Noah left the room and headed straight for the elevator. He pressed the button and stepped inside. The doors slid shut with a quiet metallic sound. He pressed 1 to go back down. But instead of descending, the elevator began to move upward. Noah frowned, confused. The panel lit up. 1, then 2, then 3, and then something impossible happened. The number 4 lit up. Noah's stomach dropped. There was no 4th floor. The elevator came to a stop, and the doors slowly creaked open. Beyond them was complete darkness. No lights, no movement, just an endless black hallway. A cold gust of air drifted inside, carrying a faint, rotten smell. Noah hesitated for a moment, every instinct telling him to stay inside. But something pulled him forward, and before he could stop himself, he stepped out. The moment he entered, he knew something was wrong. The walls looked older, worn down and peeling. Dark stains spread across the surfaces, like something had been rotting there for years. The air was heavy and thick, making it harder to breathe. The lights flickered weakly overhead, barely illuminating the corridor. The silence was overwhelming, pressing against his ears. As Noah walked further, he noticed the doors along the hallway. Each one had a number, but they made no sense. The sequence was completely random. Some doors were slightly open, while others had deep scratches carved into them from the inside. Then he heard it. Breathing. Heavy, uneven, wet. It was coming from one of the rooms ahead. Every step he took felt heavier than the last, but he couldn't stop himself. Slowly, he reached the door and pushed it open. Inside, sitting on the edge of the bed, was a figure. Its back was turned toward him. It didn't move. Then, in a weak, broken voice, it spoke. "Noah." His blood ran cold. His mind froze. "How do you know my name?" he whispered. The figure slowly began to turn its head. The movement was unnatural, too slow, too stiff. When its face finally came into view, Noah felt his heart stop. Its features were distorted. The skin looked sunken and stretched in the wrong places. Its eyes were too wide, too empty, and its mouth twisted into something that wasn't human. Suddenly the lights went out. Everything was swallowed in darkness. For a split second, there was complete silence. And then, footsteps, running straight toward him. Noah didn't think. He ran, as fast as he could. His heart pounded violently in his chest as his footsteps echoed through the endless hallway. Behind him, the sound followed. Faster, closer. He didn't dare look back. The elevator came into view. He slammed the button repeatedly, panic taking over completely. Come on! Come on! The footsteps were right behind him now. The elevator doors finally opened, and Noah threw himself inside. As the doors began to close, he looked up one last time. At the end of the hallway, it stood there, watching him, smiling. The doors shut. The elevator dropped instantly. Within seconds, it reached the first floor. The doors opened, revealing bright lights and clean floors. Everything looked normal again. Farah stood at the desk, glancing up at him with confusion. "You look like you've seen a ghost," she said. But Noah couldn't respond. He was shaking too much to speak. He turned back to the elevator panel. There was no fourth floor, no button, no sign it had ever existed. The next night, at exactly 3:17 a.m., camera 14 glitched again. But this time, it wasn't just static. For a brief moment, Noah saw something on the screen. A dark, decaying hallway. And at the very end, a figure. Standing still, watching the camera, watching him. Noah quit the job the very next day. No explanation, no notice. He never went back to the hospital again. But even now, late at night, when everything is quiet, he still hears it. Footsteps, slow, deliberate, getting closer and closer. Because some floors were never meant to exist. And some doors should never be opened. And maybe, just maybe, the fourth floor is still there, waiting.